In the early 17th century, if you were an exhausted merchant trudging along the Silk Road, this sight would bring you to your knees. Rising from the sand dunes, a glorious city appears, tree-lined avenues, dozens of onion domes, inlaid with shimmering turquoise tiles, reflecting the brilliant sun, and a river surging with crystal-clear water, cutting straight across the desert. But this was no mirage. It was Isfahan in 1610, the great capital of the Safavid Empire. Contemporaries often revered it with the phrase, Isfahan Nesfe Jahan. Isfahan is half the world. Hello everyone. Today we will step into half the world, the city of Isfahan in 1610. Don't look away, because the mystery behind those blue tiles will completely change how you view greatness. Let's begin. In 1598, the Safavid Empire stood on the edge of the abyss. In the west, the cannons of the mighty Ottoman Empire were bombarding the capital city of Kazvin. In the east, the Uzbeks were relentlessly pillaging the borders. At the age of 27, Shah Abbas I decided to move the capital deep into the center of the country, to Isfahan, an oasis town, sitting barren amidst the arid Zagros Plateau. Why this place? Isfahan was far from the reach of Ottoman cannons, situated right at the geographic choke point, controlling the north-south and east-west trade routes of the new Silk Road. But how do you feed a capital of 600,000 people in the middle of a desert where rainfall is less than 150 millimeters a year? Shah Abbas mobilized tens of thousands of laborers to upgrade the Zayande Rud, the River of Life, and the ancient Qanat system. They dug gently sloping underground tunnels from the foothills, channeling fresh water across dozens of miles beneath the earth without a single drop evaporating under the harsh sun. This water was precisely distributed to every garden, every public bathhouse, and every fountain within the royal palace. Isfahan was a massive startup project planned entirely from scratch. Shah Abbas magically transformed the arid desert into wheat oases and lush green Chahar Bagh Persian quadripartite gardens. Imagine you are a Venetian merchant who has just set foot in Isfahan. You walk through narrow tree-shaded alleys, and suddenly the space bursts wide open before your eyes. Welcome to Nakshi Jahan, pattern of the world, the second largest square on the planet. It is over half a kilometer long, twice the size of Moscow's Red Square. Standing in the center of the sun-drenched square, look to the west, and you will see the Ali Kapu Palace soaring 6 stories high. On a finely carved wooden balcony jutting out into the air, Shah Abbas sits on his throne, sipping wine from a jeweled goblet, looking down at the square. From here, he watched fierce, dust-kicking polo matches, spectacular military parades, and bloody executions. To the south is the Shah Mosque, with a colossal dome covered in millions of turquoise and yellow sapphire tiles sparkling like the sky itself. The entrance to the mosque aligns perfectly with the square, but the entire internal structure is bent at a 45-degree angle to face precisely toward the holy city of Mecca. To the east you will find the Sheikh Lotfola Mosque, lacking a minaret because it was the private sanctuary for the royal harem. Its pinkish dome magically changes color with the shifting angles of the sun. And finally, to the north stands the towering Kesari Gate, the heart of the capital, swallowing streams of people into the bustling, kilometer-long Grand Bazaar. The wealth and booming population of Isfahan did not naturally spring from the sand. In 1604, during a scorched earth campaign against the Ottomans, Shah Abbas ordered the forced relocation of over 300,000 Christian Armenians from their homeland of Yolfa. In the dead of a brutal winter, tens of thousands of families. Women and children were herded through blizzards. Thousands froze or drowned while crossing the river. However, the survivors who reached Isfahan were not turned into slaves. On the contrary, Shah Abbas granted them a beautiful tract of land south of the Zayandeh Rud, naming it New Julfa. The Armenians were natural masters of commerce and silk-weaving technology. Here in the heart of a Shia Islamic empire, a Christian community enjoyed unprecedented privileges. Shah Abbas allowed them religious freedom, let them build 24 magnificent Christian churches, and granted them the monopoly on exporting Persian silk, an unimaginable favor. These Armenian merchants draped themselves in expensive velvet cloaks, turning New Julfa into a wealthy, autonomous city. Together with the Republic of Venice, they established a trade network reaching the far ends of the Western world, London, and the Far East to India. Every meter of Persian silk sold in Europe at exorbitant prices poured profits tenfold into Shah Abbas's treasury. Shah Abbas protected them because they were the geese that laid the golden eggs. The concept of a flat world of global trade actually appeared in Isfahan 4 centuries ago. Stepping out of the Ardabil carpet bazaar with its exquisite 100-knot rugs, the sun begins to set. Isfahan sheds its skin, transforming into a city that never sleeps. Take a stroll to the Seo-Sepol Bridge. Beneath its 33 stone arches, citizens of Isfahan from all walks of life gather. Men with long beards and turbans sit in kahve-khane tea houses blurred by shisha, smoke playing chess, smoking pipes, and debating the poetry of Hafez. Women stroll about in colorful veils. Festivals of music, poetry, and acrobatics run all night under the starry desert sky. Life exudes the liberal spirit and vibrant pulse of a global megacity. But, right at that moment, look up at the dark windows of the Ali Kapu Palace. Behind those luxurious walls lies a tragedy of power. Shah Abbas, hailed as the greatest of monarchs, lived in constant terror of being overthrown by his own flesh and blood. He ordered the assassination of his brilliant eldest son, Safi Mirza, and imprisoned his 2 other sons just to ensure they could never challenge him for his throne. At the very same moment, while outside shone the brilliant light of knowledge and commerce, inside the palace was decay, cruelty, and the destruction of the future. A dynasty without a mechanism for peaceful and stable power transition is bound to sow the seeds of its own downfall. As the 18th century arrived, the Safavid dynasty eroded by incompetent kings, and the conservatism of the clergy collapsed entirely beneath the hooves of Afghan invaders. Half the world sank into ashes, looted and devastated. If you go to modern Isfahan, you will see that Naqsh-e-Jahan Square is no longer a stage for flaunting power, but a place brimming with the vitality of 2 million people. Iranian families smile while picnicking on carpets on the grass beneath the glorious mosques. Craftsmen still diligently strike their copper-carving hammers in the Grand Bazaar, and the youth resiliently stroll beneath the arches of the Seo-Sepol Bridge, even though the river beneath their feet has run dry. The splendor of half the world has never entirely vanished. It lives on in the ornate shrines, the ancient ruins, and the lines of history for us to tip our hats in admiration. I am Robert Langdon from History Reconstruction. Thank you for opening your minds and accompanying me. If you found this journey beautiful, don't forget to leave your thoughts and subscribe to the channel so that history can continue to be reborn. See you in the next chapters of history.